Hello, World at War class. Welcome to week 2, module 3. Hopefully you learned a little bit about how the fighting was in World War I in our last online session today. I want you to focus on how horrible war can be in general. A little introduction though. First of all, I want to kind of contrast what we're going to get to here in a minute with something called the Christmas Truce of 1914. I know we're going back a little bit, but I think it's just a good indication of how good people can be in war, how great, how saintly they can sometimes be, but yet at the same time, in the same war, how evil they can be as well. And so, just want to tell you quickly the story of the Christmas Truce of 1914. If you remember, the war had just begun in the summer into the fall of 1914, and everyone had said the war was going to be over by Christmas of 1914. Well, because of the Battle of the Marne and trench warfare and stalemate, it clearly was not done. So they were sitting there at some points along the Western Front between the Germans and the French and the British and the Irish and the Scottish and whoever else was there. And Christmas comes along, and the story goes is that, you know, both sides began to sing Christmas carols, and then they began to sing Christmas carols at each other, and then they began to sing Christmas carols together, and eventually, at some points along the line, troops came out of the trenches and met each other in no man's land and kind of had a Christmas party. They looked at the situation and they decided, we don't want to do this anymore. We don't want to do this right now, at least. We want to celebrate Christmas together, peace on earth and all that kind of stuff. And so they did for a couple days, right there in no man's land. They got together, they got to know each other, and they didn't kill each other. There were some cases even where they had funerals for the soldiers from both sides together. So imagine that, like a British guy being at a funeral of a German soldier that he may have just killed the day before. So there's something quite magical about the Christmas Truce of 1914. But the weird thing is that even though they decided there on Christmas of 1914 not to kill each other, like a few days later they're back to killing each other again. And I don't know what happens. I don't know what happens where you decide, you know, that the peace that you had just created without orders, you kind of were going against orders with the Christmas Truce of 1914. You created world peace. And then a couple days later you go back to killing the people that you just got to know. So that's kind of odd. But the Christmas Truce in 1914 is one of those events that I think I would love to have been at. As you know, people ask those questions, are there any moments in history that you'd like to be at? Certainly the Christmas Truce of 1914 on the Western Front of World War I would be one of those things. But there were some other things that were going on right about the same time too, later on anyways. In Turkey, at this point it's called the Ottoman Empire, there was a Battle of Gallipoli, it's called. The Battle of Gallipoli, it was the British, the Australians, and New Zealand against the Ottoman Turks who were fighting to protect their land. And if you remember, the Russians had always wanted a warm water port, and they'd have to go through the Ottoman Empire to get to the Mediterranean Sea. And so it was essential if the British could break through a hole through the Ottoman Empire to allow the Russian Navy to get through and also to get supplies back up to Russia. That would be fantastic. And so the British picked this place called Gallipoli, which is these high cliffs. For some reason they picked like the stupidest place to attack the Ottomans. These high cliffs, and the Ottomans just kind of stood up there and shot down at the British and wasted them. And the British could never climb up those cliffs. And so like what happened on the Western Front, both sides dug in and there was stalemate. And this Battle of Gallipoli lasts 8 or 9 months before the British realized this is probably not worth it, and just one day the British kind of float away. As a result, the Ottoman Empire, they have their new leader named Mustafa Kemal, but then he changes his name to Ataturk. Ataturk becomes the leader of what we know as the modern nation of Turkey, which really is formed after World War I. However, while the Battle of Gallipoli is going on, the Islamic Turks in the Ottoman Empire thought that this would be a great opportunity to get rid of a group of people that they had never liked and never wanted in their country. And those people were these Christian Armenians. So these Armenians lived up in Russia and it spilled out into Turkey. They were all over the place. So these Christian Armenians just lived peacefully there for centuries and thought they got along, but the Islamic Turks saw this opportunity as a way to get rid of them. And this really is the first genocide of the 20th century, the Armenian genocide, where the Islamic Turks killed these Christian Armenians. So we have a reading for you. If you could take a second and read through the article that we have attached here about the Armenian genocide. And what's interesting is that in Module 4, I believe, here this week, we'll be comparing that and looking at the Holocaust during World War II, and we'll try to see if there's any similarities between the actions of the people who both participated in both of these genocides and those who kind of just watched it happen. And that'll be a big lesson that we learn from both these world wars. So good luck with that. Thank you. And again, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to email me or talk to Mrs. Lincoln or yourself. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.